Welcome to the Limitless Leaders Podcast. This is a show where my guests and I explore and expand on all things mindset, leadership, and communication. On the show, I interview inspiring leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all walks of life, where they share their stories, experiences, and lessons. This is a podcast for you if you're looking to learn, grow, and accelerate your life, career, and who you are. Welcome to the Limitless Leaders Podcast, a podcast where we explore and expand on topics with people from all walks of life. Today, my guest, and I'm super excited to have him along, is talking to us about being curious about what success is, what it means for us, and how we define it and bring it into our lives. We're just almost a quarter of the way into the year. Easter's approaching in Australia. We've got autumn coming at us pretty fast. And I think it's a really good time to stop, reset, and refocus. So I'd love to introduce you to our guest today, Andy Reid. How are you, Andy?
I'm really, really good. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute privilege to share the airwaves with someone as revered as yourself.
Oh, you're lovely. Now, I've really been looking forward to our chat and also, discussing your new book. But for those out there, Andy is a published author, speaker, podcast host, and auctioneer, having kicked goals in multiple industries, including hospitality and real estate. And he now uses his experience to help others to understand human behavior that is involved in the decision-making process. His first book, which I've read and is an amazing book, Success Curious, has recently just cracked the US, Canadian, UK, and Indian markets. And the book really aligns to Andy's sole purpose of making success more accessible to each and every one of us. So super excited before we go into the book, Andy. I'd love to ask you, and it is a, how long is a piece of string question. How have you got to where you are today, being here with me on this podcast? What's your journey in a bit of a summary?
It's been a bit of a whirlwind, if I'm honest, and it's been born through a stack of pressure that more so the pressure that I put on myself, as opposed to the pressure that anybody else has put on me. As you know, Renee, the mind can be a tremendously powerful thing for both good and bad. And I've experienced both. And I'm grateful that I'm still around to tell the tale. And through that, and while that's been going on, moving halfway across the world and dealing with different industries and what have you, it's one of those ones where I didn't really set out with a plan. And I wasn't planning on being in Australia, and I wasn't planning on writing a book as such. But I'm one of those guys that if you throw something in front of me and it feels good and it feels right, I'll rock and roll. And so, it's been a heck of a lot of gut-based decisions that have got me here. Yeah,
definitely. And I think I resonate with that, opportunities, you see good in everything, and I'm a bit like you. I read that. I think that's why we get along so well. Anything that comes at us, I think, is to teach us a lesson and help us become who we are continually becoming, So,
sure.
So right now, Andy, your book, Success Curious, How to Define and Achieve High Performance. And I know you have the amazing podcast, High Performance Humans. Tell us a little bit about the overview. What sort of motivated you to write a book on this?
Well, at first I wanted to do a book around continuing on through life when you're dealing with things like mental illnesses and mental health issues and so on. And so that was the original idea for the book. And then as I started going through the process, I very quickly realized that broaching the topic of mental illness and success at the same time, it's a bit too it's a bit like when two worlds collide sort of thing. So what I ended up doing was focusing more on the success side of things in this first book, because I just genuinely believe that, and I've been doing lots of studies around this as well. I genuinely believe that success can be for the many. It doesn't have to be for the few.
Yeah.
But the problem is, a lot of the time, people just are so limited in their view of what can be achieved based on their perception of success that has been framed by other people, right? The
And their
world's
story.
just,
Yeah.
oh man, the world's just so noisy these days. And so for people to try and understand and keep hold of their own identity, really difficult, really,
Yeah.
really challenging. So that's where this book has sort of morphed into this very user-friendly sort of guide to help people understand what success means to them, to actually build an identity for themselves around success, so
Yeah.
that anything that they decide to go on and do after that is built on a much more solid foundation. And I just found that, and I've been through it myself, man, and we all go through it. You know, you buy these courses, you read these books, and you have these fanciful ideas when you come out the other end of it, but they never really feel truly aligned with who you are and what you do and why you exist. And so that's where this book sort of acts as a bit of a conduit between the general perception of success and the humans that really struggling to try and get there.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think it can become overwhelming. There's a paragraph in your book which really resonated with me, because I talk about it as well. You know, you see these reels, these highlights of people's lives. Everyone does comparinitis. You know, I always say comparison's a killer. You know, you and I both have hundreds or thousands of people that do what we do, but our IP is different. We're different. Our stories are different. And I think maybe at times success is a bit like walking into a shop and there's too many things that you don't make a decision.
Big time. Oh, look,
Yeah.
massively. I mean, it's interesting. I was actually, it's actually been by writing this book that you learn. I mean, I've learned so much about myself by writing this bloody thing, right?
Yeah.
And not only now do I truly own my own definition, and I have complete ownership as to why I exist now. But I'd gone through I'd written the first chunk of the book, and I sent it through to the publisher for just to see if they like the flavor. And I got an email back saying, Andy, ... where's all the swearing? Because, being from the being from the middle of England, right? Swearing is part of our standard vernacular. And I was like, oh, but I was trying to be dead clever. I said to her, look, I'm trying to use words of multiple syllables. You know, I know a few big words. And she said, Andy, but there's a lot of people that know what you know, but there's only one Andy that knows it.
In your own way. Yeah.
We've not given you a deal because of what you know. We've given you a deal because of who you are.
Yes, that's right.
And that was a massive little light bulb moment. I was like, oh shit. So I had to start again. So that was great. But it just flowed a lot better after that.
Yeah.
When I was trying
you're being your true self, Andy. And I think
exactly
writing a book, and those out there who are listening, and there's a lot more people writing books, which is great, but writing a book is a learning process in itself. But what's made you successful, Andy, is who you are at your core. So it's a bit like the irony in your expertise, right? Then you're writing a book that doesn't sound like you.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Stupid.
You've got to bring that in. So what does success mean to you? I know it's different for everybody. It's in the eye of the beholder.
For sure. For me, a successful human is a human in flow, right? And so what I mean by that, like flow state for me is something that initially I'd labeled as escapism, until I really truly understood what flow state was.
Yeah.
It was when I first started auctioneering, and I used to feel like conducting an auction was 20 minutes or half an hour of escape from the stresses of real life.
Yeah.
And it was a really negative sort of viewpoint that I'd formed around it, because if you're feeling that you need to escape, from your existence, then your existence ain't too good.
No, that's
And
right.
and this was prior to really digging into that trip down mental health lane, right? And then once I'd started going through it and started to learn and evolve and study myself and all that, that's when I stumbled across flow state. And then from there, it's really become a key part of my life, whereby for me, being in a state of flow means that everything is aligned. Who you are, what you know, why you do it, how you do it. And
Mm,
it's when people say, "Oh, it just comes easy to me," or "It just feels effortless."
yeah,
It's not effortless. It's just fulfilling within its effort for you.
yeah,
And so that for me is, and that can be in doing whatever, right? It could be something that is dollar productive. It could be something that is just a hobby. It could be something that, for some people, parenting might be their flow state where just everything's in harmony, right?
yeah,
But it's whenever you feel that everything's just clicked.
yeah.
That for me is success.
Yeah, I love that. And it is a feeling. A lot of people, I think we need to get out of our heads and into our heart.
Hmm.
Because when I think of flow, it's the whole gut feel, the knowing, and the logic combined. And I think I always say, Andy, we've become human doings instead of human beings. And
No, for sure.
just stopping and going, who do I need to be that I think creates that flow of what you need to do, which will come naturally to the outcome that you want. Um,
Absolutely. And that's where you see so many rich people like end up in real holes, right? Because the fact
oh,
that they've sort of clung on to their materialistic perception of success, thinking that that's the be all and end all. And then
yeah,
they've discovered that chasing that perception of success has led them to feel tremendously empty.
yeah,
So, and that's why you're absolutely right. Success is a feeling. And that's where, for some people, success does have tremendous financial gain. And for
yeah,
some people, it doesn't.
yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it depends what it is for you. Like for me, it's for me personally, and I feel really aligned to this, it's helping people grow and realize their potential, whether they're family, some friends, what I do for a living. Yes, I'm in the corporate world, but it's attracting growth seekers and seeing change. Um,
Hmm.
and I view everything, and I've been through a lot as well, as it's just given me more experience, real life experience that I can switch into practical, strategies for other people as well.
For
'Cause-
sure, man. For sure. And that's where understanding your DNA, like really understanding,
yeah.
who
Oh,
you
yeah.
are and who you are in relation to that success piece. Like the book really was the final sort of step for me in understanding and being able to articulate it in simple terms
Yeah.
as to my existence, right? As you mentioned at the start of the show, my reason for being is to make success more accessible. I had this problem, right, where the whole thought leadership thing really drilled too far into me, where I was trying to always come up with the next big thing and then
Yes.
getting really frustrated, right? Whereas I now truly understand my position in life and in society
Yeah.
is to take the big, amazing, crazy ideas from people and have the knowledge and the nous and the intellect to be able to translate it into a language that the masses can understand. I'm
Yeah.
like the conduit between the great big ideas and people.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that. I
and
love
I'm cool being there now.
Mm.
Totally cool being there now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well done. And those listening, success changes as well.
Oh
So
yeah,
what it might mean, as you're younger, it could be getting through uni or school to get your first job, you feel successful. And I think I look at it like rings in a slice of timber. So they've
yeah.
come its own, then the next thing and the next thing. Um, where does did read it in your book. I love knowing what words mean. I'm a bit of a word nerd. What does success mean again? Do you remember? Like it's Greek, isn't it? Doesn't it come
Oh
from?
yeah, so yeah, it's got ancient. Yeah, so the derivation that it comes from is succedere,
Yes.
which is to progress.
Yeah.
So which is it's got Latin origins as well.
Yeah.
So succedere it's a verb, it's a doing word in ancient terminology, and it's to progress. So by definition, success is like you said, it's an ever evolving thing. Because as soon as you stop feeling that sense of success, you could argue that that's when the world's sort of stopping, which isn't great. When we know that the world's going to turn whether we like it or not. So for you to feel like you've made it, this whole misconception of when you've made it, right?
Oh, the term.
When have any of us ever made it?
Yeah.
When have any of us ever made it?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a bit like the word expert. I get introduced a lot as an expert. Yes, I know a lot about certain topics, as many of us do, but to me, expert's like hitting a ceiling. We've got to
Yeah.
be, my big word is limitless. It's forever evolving.
Yeah, it's like you feel that you're planting your flag and going, right, that's me. That's me now. I'm an expert up to this point. The end.
And we all know life changes, things get, are out of our control a lot of the time. Different people are out of our control, situations, all of those things. Andy, I have a concept or a mindset called the gift mindset, which is about being open to unwrap the gifts in challenging and successful sort of situations and people. What is one of the biggest lessons you've learned over the years? Something that's happened, negative or positive, that's really impacted on the person you are today? What was that about?
The easy one to lean on is when I got diagnosed with acute anxiety and depression. And it's nearly 10 years ago,
Wow.
27th of March, 10 years ago, was when it all sort of started, you could call it. It started before that, if I'm being honest, but the official start, when the rubber stamp. So what I quickly discovered with that is, in order for us to truly understand who we are, how we tick, and how to make the best of who we are and how we tick in the world, we need to become students of ourselves. You need to study yourself more than you study anyone else, because it's not a case of becoming self-involved. It's very much a case of becoming self-evolved.
Yeah.
And it was something that I was forced to do, because the alternative would mean that we wouldn't be talking here today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately. So if I hadn't learned and studied and faced up to some realities that I uncovered as a result of studying myself and studying how the brain works and the body works and all that sort of stuff, then it's the whole adage of knowledge is power, but you really don't realize how powerful it can be within yourself.
That's right.
We're always looking for the external lessons when so much of it's internal.
I love that. I totally agree. I think we're our work in progress. And I think you're right. We don't, I'm generalizing a bit, but most people, I'm guilty of it, don't stop enough and go attention in. I'm a giver, so it's a lot of attention out. And I think it's so important, because self-awareness has to come first. We do a lot, as you know, a lot of work with leaders and teams, and I ran a whole thing on empathy the other week, but I started with self-awareness, and someone said, "So we're talking about empathy today." I'm like, "Well, you can't be empathetic unless you're self-aware." They're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Well, how can you give out?" It's a bit like, I'll use the example in Australia. You see so many roof plumbing businesses, old houses with their roofs caving in with a sign out the front. And you go, yeah, right. I don't think I'd buy a roof from them. So you've got to get that foundation right, which is self-awareness, which is your thoughts, feedback from the outside world, mix that together, and then take that time to have an intro perspective.
Yeah, for sure, man. Empathy is a really interesting one, because I like to believe that before I went on all this, I was a pretty empathetic sort of an individual, right? But like you said, there is such a thing as too much giving, right? When it comes to empathy, because if you go too hard into empathy, it can end up being at the behest of your own existence, which is really, really challenging sometimes, right? And it's weird, because a lot of people that are naturally empathetic, but they don't really understand why, don't realize that they miss it. They've got a tremendous gift that if they just dug a little bit into that, for themselves,
Yeah.
it would become an absolute superpower,
Oh,
right?
so, and it is a superpower. It's in empathy and optimism are in the top 6 traits of successful leaders globally, and it keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And also having empathetic boundaries. I've just written a piece on this that comes out next week. So actually having boundaries, like what you take on and what you don't, because there's a lot of that out there at the moment. Compassion
Oh,
I'm calling it empathetic fatigue, where everyone's on eggshells. There's a lot of mental illness in Australia. It's 1 in 5. I have someone very close to me that has the most horrific mental illness. I get it, but I do think at times it's being used as a bit of a scapegoat.
oh, bad. Like, I could not agree with
Oh,
you more around that. I could not
yeah,
agree with you more. I mean, for me, it's reasonably obvious purely because of the fact that I've got the battle scars myself, right? As when it
yeah,
comes to who's going through it and
yeah,
who's just having a whinge, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think part of the reason why it's become so much more of a pandemic or an epidemic, shall we say, is purely down to awareness,
It
right?
is.
Because it's so much more prevalent in society. It's like ADHD.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
everyone has that now.
you know what I mean? And but then if you go through the test, if you actually go and get tested properly and formally and whatnot, it
Mm.
becomes very clear as to whether you have actually got it or whether you're just messing about,
Yeah, it's
you know?
almost like busy became the badge of honor. Now it's all these other things. No, please, those that are listening that are, going through deep depression and that, I totally empathize. I'm talking about, the people that used to say they had a shitty day to saying, "Oh, I'd feel like jumping off a cliff," and being serious about it, that sort of stuff. So, you've had lots of lessons, Andy, and a thing I love about your book is, and I think it's important for a good book is, especially if you know the author, to feel like I can hear you reading that. And when I read the swear words, I had a little giggle in there.
Hence the swear word, yes, hence the swear words.
Um, but one of the quotes you really like is, "Oh, sorry, I'm prepared to be hated in order to be loved."
Yeah, man. That one's a relatively recent lesson for me.
Yeah.
Um, the whole concept is sort of, I found that quote when I was digging into the whole concept of nice guys, right? And at the minute, there's been a huge vernacular around nice guys don't finish last, they can win, and all this sort of stuff. And I actually think it's an overcorrection whereby no, nice guys will finish last, right? Because it's good humans that are prepared to say the right thing to the potential detriment of themselves
Yeah.
or to the negative reaction, but they're saying the right thing as opposed to the nice thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that's right.
There's just such a difference between a nice guy and a good human,
Yeah,
and that's something that I've learned because I was a huge, still am to a degree. It's an old habit. It is a bit of a struggle sometimes to people please.
yeah, yeah,
And
same.
there's lots of people pleasers kicking around, and I think because of again societal pressures to accept all these various different things that are going on, right?
Yeah,
We're we're made to people please, but now I've sort of come to the realization that in order to be loved by the people that are supposed to be in your world, you have to define a line. You talk about boundaries. An
yeah,
emotional boundary for this is just enormous because if you try and be all things to all people,
yeah,
you end up just losing track of who you are. And that's what happened to me.
yeah, yeah. And
So, yeah.
you've got to know, I always say, you've got to know what you stand for, because if you don't, you stand for nothing.
Oh, exactly. And it ties into things like,
Oh,
what you don't challenge, you accept
yeah,
and all those sorts of things, right? The same sort of stuff. Now for me, and I think what a lot of people don't understand around that is you can never blame yourself for upsetting people if anything that you do has always got a good intention behind it.
I agree with
Because
that.
if you do that, if you put things out there with good intentions to help people,
Yeah,
and some people have an adverse reaction to that, then
yeah,
it's an opportunity to learn a new perspective, right?
that's right.
What one thing that I've not got in the book, you talk about ever evolving, right? I'm already evolving on from that book, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So something that isn't in there is about I talk about perspective a bit,
yeah,
but realistically, like, perspective is power.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the more perspectives you understand, the
yeah,
more powerful you become as a human being,
yeah, that's right.
because your ability to articulate to multiple perspectives is just
Oh,
such a skill to have.
it is. It is. And learning to something I've learned over the years is, some people do act. I've had a few people in my life react really weirdly to my cancer journey. Like
Mm.
I told you.
Oh, I bet.
Um, and at first I was like, what have I done? And then I was like, you know what? That's a reflection of them. Maybe they don't know how to deal with it. They're used to me being the strong one. Maybe they don't want to see, another side of me. But I think
Mm.
taking that on board's really, interesting. So they're saying at the moment, I won't say the stat because I'm not sure of it, but a lot of people are having a side hustle because they're not
Mm.
getting the purpose, fulfillment, and success that lights their soul on fire at work. And I see it. I
Mm.
coach a lot of execs that have charity things on the side, and it's great.
Yeah.
When I delve in, Andy, they'll say, I just don't get a sense of purpose at work. How can people, or what's a good question people could sort of ruminate on or reflect on around, am I in the right role to give me the success that means something to me?
There's a really amazing old school psychological study that I've got in a book called Self-Determination Theory.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's from a guy called Decci, and it was done in 1971. And he determined that there was, it's all around intrinsic motivation versus external motivation.
Yeah.
Like when we're not feeling a sense of purpose with what we're doing from an income point of view, it essentially is saying that we are externally motivated to be at work because
Yeah.
this needs paying for, bills need doing, blah 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 blah, right? Which is all very very relevant. However, in order for us to be internally motivated, intrinsically motivated, and they, like you said, have the fire, get the buzz.
Yeah.
There's three components. The first one is autonomy, where we feel that we have the capability to be able to do things by ourselves, be self-sufficient. The second one is competence, basically what we know, and the ability to be able to make that into existence. The third one's the tricky one that most people are missing, right? Lots of people are missing. And that's relatedness. Now, is what I'm doing relating to who I am as a human being? Is what I'm doing, is it connected in a sense to my own DNA? Right now, when I was a real estate salesperson for a good chunk of time at the start, like autonomy and competence were there,
Yeah, yeah,
but my relatedness really, the lack of relatedness,
Mm.
it nearly put me in a padded cell because I was like, why can't
You're
I
not aligned.
become successful
Yeah,
at this?
yeah,
Because I wasn't aligned. So, but then when I understood, because I have no affinity for houses, I have no attachment for that sort of stuff, right? So hence why moving around the world is pretty easy for me. So, but when the penny dropped and I understood that for me, being a real estate salesperson was not about selling houses. It was helping the people take the next big step in their lives and
yeah.
using real estate as a vehicle.
I love that. Yeah,
All of a sudden, I started getting a buzz,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then it sort of went into the auctioneering field, and then obviously sort of snowballed from there. And so, and the thing is, right, what we've got to be very very careful of when we talk about all of this is understanding that we ultimately bills need to be paid.
yeah,
Right, we can't just ditch things because we don't feel related to it. Right, there's a practicality to the world that we can't ignore.
yeah.
However, and I said this to it was one of the dads in the school pickup actually,
Mm.
because he's the same thing. He's a concreter, really just doesn't feel the buzz off it.
Yeah,
But his ability to communicate to children
yeah,
is off the charts, right? He talks, all the kids listen. Like Renee, as a parent,
yeah,
we talk.
yeah, yeah.
Kids will tell us to get stuffed half the time.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So the fact that he can do that, I said, man, why don't you dig into that?
yeah,
Why don't you just explore it? So if you ask, coming back to what you said there,
Mm.
While you're doing the thing that's paying the bills, put in the effort to explore
Other.
the potential,
Yeah.
right? Because some people just don't. Some people just assume that they're never going to be able to make a living off of what they love because of the fact they don't explore the avenues that could take them down, right? Just go and explore, taste and test, and
You've got to. There's so many people, it's stories. It's almost like when I left the corporate world, like I had a very good role with a global 12 years. There was that day I just went, oh my God, this I could do anything. It's almost overwhelming the power of having
mm,
autonomy. But then I was like, no, people need me. And I went back the other way. And I love what you said there, Andy, because I'm a big, my saying in life is do what lights you up. Like we run a program on mapping
mm,
what energizes you, not what you're good at, but what energizes you. And they're usually different things than you're good at. So,
spot on.
yeah,
And I wish more kids would understand that. So when I was at school, I was good at maths and physics,
yeah,
right? What lit me up was English speaking,
yes, yeah, same. Yeah,
you
it's
know?
interesting. So those out there, think about it. And I love that the autonomy, the capability, and the relatability, making sure whatever you're doing, especially in the corporate world, Andy, people are good at something. So you're in a lane where our societal norms teach us that the higher we get, the more money we have, the more successful we are, right? But
Yep.
actually pursuing, I got asked yesterday, I did a keynote, and someone said, so how do I find my passions? And I said, in the cracks of time, what do you read about? What do you look at on reels? What do you watch on TV? What do you think about? Be that, take that from sort of state curiosity to trait curiosity and explore it further.
Mm.
Andy, I'd love to ask you, what does leadership mean to you when you think of the word? Because it can be, and I say to a lot of people, our expertise is leadership, but it's all the enablers to make you a leader, which is comms and all the other stuff.
Mm, mm, mm,
But
mm.
what does it mean to you, leadership?
Um, Leadership is, I think there's a couple of elements to it. I think leadership is to understand.
Yeah,
I think that's the first part to it. We can't lead unless we understand our people, right? I personally don't feel like, unless we understand um, the things that make our people tick, then we're not going to actually lead many people or much. Um, I am a firm believer in, from a leadership point of view, in being able to do what you say. Like I don't see leadership as something that you can talk about
yeah,
without being able to walk about.
that's right.
I think that there's an element to that as well.
Yes,
And I've learned that for myself. Done talks on things that I knew,
yeah. Yeah.
but so I think that's part of it as well. And I
Mm,
think, I think leadership is also about being vulnerable. The ability to be vulnerable in who you are, I think, is a massive element to leadership as well.
it is.
I think too many people put the perception out there that they're made of Teflon,
Yeah.
and then conversely, which is what you were alluding to earlier on, which is true. There's a lot of people that have not become too vulnerable, but they've sort of mistaken vulnerability for weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas for me, and because vulnerability is owning who you are, it's also owning who you're not, and
That's
it's
right.
owning what you know, and it's owning what you don't know. And
Yeah.
true leaders are totally comfortable in owning what they don't know, because then they have the awareness to be able to bring together the people that do know stuff, and then create a sense of interdependence, which means everybody wins.
That's right. And then you get your high performing team. And I think, vulnerability, Brene Brown's, she's brought it to the forefront of thinking. And it's, a few companies are going, it's just a bit overused. I'm like,
It is.
be vulnerable. If you're having a shitty day, have a shitty day. Just don't make it every day, right?
Mm,
Because as a leader, your energy, your optimism is to bring people up. But I think high performing teams are identify and appreciate the differences in each person and then rise together, leveraging that. I think
Yeah.
really, really.
And being accountable is having the having the ability to go, right, I'm prepared to be accountable here, right? Being prepared to be accountable for your stuff, right? And taking full ownership of all your decisions.
Yeah, and just owning it, right? Ownership and accountability. I think the intersection of that's true flow,
Oh, for sure, man. For sure.
So there's so many other things I wanted to ask you, just a few more. I had a giggle, the myth of overnight success. I had someone the other week go, "Oh, you're so lucky you get to do this." And I just went, "I'm 52. I've had to have a corporate career to understand what I'm doing, and I've had my company 19 years." So, myth, success is measured by your bank account. Like you said, you can have people with gazillions in the bank that are unhappy and not living in.
And the challenge that could come with that is the golden handcuffs, right? When you're accustomed to a lifestyle, but that lifestyle doesn't align with who you are. It's a problem.
That's right. And then you're mixing with people that might have those, different values that don't align with you. In your book, Andy, and you can see all the little doggies in here. It is a book that I would say to those listening or watching, I'd get a copy of the book. I know, Andy, you write, and there's a lot of other resources. But I think it's a book you can keep going back to and refer to. I love the structure around, success curious. Let's look at success. Let's look at influence. Let's look at connection, and let's look at happiness. And there's a bit in there, that's obviously the book. But if you had to just talk about those 4 points, just a little something that our audience could do under success, influence, connection, and happiness.
So success we've kind of already talked about, like being able to define it for yourself is the biggie, right? I think there's such a misunderstanding around success that there's going to be a constant battle with that, not because of social media, but because of how humans use social media. So being able to truly define what success means to you is really, really critical. So for me, being able to define it as success is a human in flow. Just makes it very, very easy for me to then make decisions for myself around what's going to contribute towards my own success, right? Which is progress, right? Now, connection, it kind of relates to what you just said before. You can't possibly be able to connect with someone truly if you don't understand how you are shaped yourself. I see connection as like a big jigsaw puzzle, right?
Yeah, totally.
If you don't understand your own jigsaw puzzle piece shape, then how are you going to be able to interlink with other people in a connected way, right? There's always going to be clashes and so on and so forth, right? So I think being able to understand and truly connect with who you are first will make life a lot easier. Not to only connect with people, but to actually understand who you're supposed to connect with as well, right? Which I think is pretty critical. Influence, the one thing that I would love people to take away from the influence section is influencer has been a term that has become very common. It's become dirtied. It's become sullied, and it's become abused. However, if you look back in history, like Jesus was an influencer, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I hadn't really. If you look at the definition of an influencer, you take any of them, right? Any of the main people in history, they were all influencers, right? Leonardo da Vinci was a massive influence. The Mona Lisa is actually a shit. It's actually shit.
And I've
seen it.
Yeah, so
I've seen it. It's rubbish. Yeah. It's rubbish, but because he was such an influencer of his time, it became this crazy thing, right? Yeah. So to hold influence is not to be all tits, tan, and tea. It's to actually create and invoke change in society. Yeah, that's what a real influencer is. Yeah, so if you can get away from the modern day vernacular around it and the BS around it, then and actually own your own voice, then you can become a person of influence.
I love that.
And then the last one on happiness. The world's going to keep turning whether you like it or not. And like what you said, you know, you can have a shitty day, don't make it every day.
Yeah.
But I think for a successful human to keep following that trajectory of success, it's the ability to understand that whether you like it or not, and accept that whether you like it or not, the world's going to keep turning. So when it does, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like I said, I didn't use my mental illness as an excuse. I used it as a reason to evolve.
Yeah.
And I refer to it as the best bad thing that's ever happened to me. Right. And kind of like, you know, alongside the whole, in alignment with the gift mindset, right? It's the best bad thing that's ever happened to me. But I mean, you talk about being 52, I mean, a decade of studying this in myself. And I've only recently, over the last few months, truly come to understand my DNA.
Yeah.
Right.
I can actually see it in you from when I caught up with you last time. It's like, it sounds cliche, but it is like a switch clicks, something flicks on and you're like, that's why that's happened. And, you know, I always say welcome the unwelcome, right? Because you cannot welcome it. It's going to happen anyway. It's how you do it. And I think it's
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, Andy, that you've, you know, flipped it. The book's amazing in itself. And I think, you know, like, you know, even looking at this, you can't have success without connection. You can't have connection without influence, and you can't have influence without happiness. And think about if you're out there right now going, am I successful? You're the only one that can answer that. So what is it that, you know, I say gets you out of bed? What is it on a Sunday night? Like last night, you know, I'm around people going, oh God, tomorrow's work. And I was so excited. I'm doing this with you. I've had coaching sessions and you almost feel like a bit of I just don't say anything, but find out what it is that lights you up. Find out what it is that means success to you and be open that can change. I think that's really important.
That's massive. That last thing, that last bit that you just said there is massive. It's being open to the prospect.
Yes.
Right. Being open to the prospect that things could change. You know, and I can hear a number of people saying now, oh, well, it's all well and good for you to say that, but you know, I've got bills to pay and blah, blah, blah. It's not like every day it's not like we can be in flow every day. No, that's the whole part of being human. Yeah. And if you felt like you're being in flow every day, chances are you're probably missing out on a few things because you're probably just gone into a bit of a sense of comfort, which is just letting you cruise, right? And if that's your MO, that's totally cool. Yeah. But you know, in order to appreciate the light, we need to have a little bit of dark in our lives every now and then, and that's totally cool. It's accepting that dark, right? Yeah. It's accepting that dark, and then being able to sit in the dark and understand why you're in the dark, and then be able to be open to the prospect that things are going to change.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And yeah, it's like if you don't know the dark from the light, you're actually not being aware as well. And I think, and it doesn't have to be the worst, you know, you've been through, you know, horrific mental health issues. I've had cancer. Everyone's got their thing, right? Or people around you that are sick. But I think at the end of the day, it's worth sitting down. You've got some great questions in this book that can actually help people map out what success means to them. So, Andy, where can they get your book, Success Curious?
Amazon is probably the first port of call. You've got Amazon, Booktopia, all the major bookstores. It's on my site as well, andyreid.com.au. It's not on Audible yet. We're in the process of working that out. Yeah. But you can get it on Kindle and whatnot as well if you want. If you didn't want the hard copy, you can get an ebook from on Kindle there as well. So yeah, but Amazon. You just Google Success Curious Andy Reid and it pops up.
And Andy, you've given us your website. Is that the best way for people to find you? Because I know you're doing workshops and keynotes and also one-on-one and group coaching around what success looks like. How can people find you?
Yeah, look, you can contact me through my site at andyreid.com.au, or you can, I'm very active on the various socials. So on
Yeah.
Instagram, you can get a hold of me at Andy Reid Coaching. And I'm a pretty easy guy to find on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I've just got my last little two questions for you. So,
Hmm.
being a limitless leader, and we're all leaders of self before we're leaders of others and decisions, so we're all limitless. How do you keep your energy up? What keeps you being limitless?
I always make sure I'm having fun.
Yeah,
Like whatever it is I'm doing, whatever it is I'm doing, I'm having fun. Yes, there are things that aren't fun,
yeah,
and they're the things that I need to take a deep breath, put my big boy pants on, and go, right, no, this
yeah,
isn't fun, but it has to be done.
yeah.
Um, but it's understanding that those hard bits are gonna give me the ticket to go and have some fun elsewhere, right?
Love that.
So I just make sure I'm just keep having fun, man.
Yeah, have fun. I would say find those joy bubbles, and know who and what lights you up because the people around
Hmm.
us can bring us up or down. Andy, just our last bit of trivia. So, what's your favorite word?
Depends if this is a pre-watershed or post-watershed podcast.
I'm getting
Um,
a feeling. I'm getting a feeling.
yes, there is a word that we won't say on this podcast that is my favorite word because of the fact that I'm a big Billy Connolly believer, and
Yeah,
Billy
yeah,
Connolly's got this very famous line. I know lots of big words, but I still prefer to use the word
yeah,
right. So there's that one. Um, I like simplicity. That's my jam. Is if the world is simple,
yeah,
if life is simple, then my life is simple, then I'm happy.
yeah.
So
Beautiful.
simplicity is just what that. I'm not messing about. Simplicity is my favorite word by a distance.
Yeah, beautiful. Favorite sound.
Favorite sound.
Hope you had your coffee this morning.
Favorite sound. Favorite sound. As much as it annoys me at times, my kids waking me up.
Yeah, yeah. How
That's
gorgeous.
that's a pretty cool sound.
Yeah, yeah. Just don't tell them that.
No, God no.
Your last night on the beautiful planet of ours, what would be your last supper? What would you eat?
Chili con carne.
Yum. I
Which
love
sounds very simple, right? It was the dish that my old man used to make pretty much every Saturday. It would be the dish that we'd sit down and watch the sport too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be my favorite. That'd be my last supper.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And if you were to pursue a different career other than what you're doing, what would that be?
I'd love to be a paramedic.
Hmm.
Um,
I can imagine you
um,
a paramedic actually.
I'd love to be a paramedic. So I nearly joined the army at 15, and because I was going through a cadetship and I was pretty good at it, so they were sort of offering me a scholarship, which would take me through to like from 15 to 28.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
just decided at the time not to go for it because I thought it was 13 years. To sign off 13 years of my life at 15 was a
At a
fairly
time. Yeah.
heavy decision. But ultimate pressure like that would be it'd be insane. It'd be so good. The only challenge is I got to learn all the stuff first, right? Which
Yeah.
bit of a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. Look, we could talk all day. I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast, for all your
Oh,
insights. Those out there, make sure you grab a copy. And like I said, it's a guidebook you can flick through. It's even a book I found. There were some chapters I just opened and read, not in order, but that's just me and my brain. But everything still made sense. So it's a bit of a choose your own adventure.
it
Thank you
is.
for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Renee. I can't tell you, it is. It's a genuine privilege. And by the way, listeners, she doesn't pay me to say this. It's a genuine privilege to be connected to someone like Renee. So if you do get a chance to reach out, and make sure you do because your life's better for it.
Thank you. You're lovely. Thanks so much. And for everyone out there, you can find Andy, go into our show notes. And we've got what the whole podcast will be transcribed as well. Look forward to seeing you at any of our upcoming events, our public events. Just go to Renee Giarrusso, that will be in the show notes.com, and have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. Thanks, Andy.
Take care, team.
Thank you for listening to the Limitless Leaders Podcast. So you don't miss an episode, make sure you follow the show in your favourite podcast app. Feel free to share this podcast with your family, friends, and work colleagues. If you're enjoying the show, find out more on what we do at RG Dynamics at www.reneegiarrusso.com. Until next time, be limitless.